the children that I've been involved with to try to get them set on the right path. Those stories will never leave me. That's the message that I can consistently bring to this House in other deliberations and at the caucus table as well. And I say that because I know last year I brought up a point about overpayments with you, and the fact that we, immediately slapped a $45 charge on them, and I understand business-wise we have to get our money back. But you took that information back to the department, and I know now that there has been a policy change. So estimate debates are very good, in my opinion. I'm going to touch on a couple other issues. And when I first came to this House in 2006, I touched on briefly about a more holistic approach when an individual actually approaches the department. As we know, the department is the last resort. It's a very difficult step to take for an individual. Usually when someone comes to the office for help, we always say, well, call first. You have to, the onus is on you to call. And if you have an issue, then you can come back to us. Always get a name and number. And I know last year in the business plan, you had stated that, the emphasis and the philosophy is going to be more on a personal touch with clients. And I honestly believe that is the key here. I know when individuals come into my office, that's how I deal with them. They come in with one problem, but the one problem is usually caused by a host of other issues. And the job is, in my opinion, is to get that person set on the right path so when they leave the door, they know what direction they're going in, okay? They know where to go to get the help. So I guess it's an overall philosophy of when an individual comes to the department, we go through the intake, we get assigned a caseworker, and keep in mind that it is a tough choice, as you know. And a lot of people don't realize who've never had to do it. Ask for help. You're at your lowest point. The holistic approach, in my opinion, would be to sit that individual down and say, why are you here? What has brought you here? Because I can only give so much. Or maybe you don't, but I'll tell you how much we can give you. But tell me why you're here. Sit down, have a cup of tea, a coffee. Tell me your story. And then put that individual, even though the programs are out there, the services are available, so employment support workers are available, that individual might not be prepared to take on that challenge for obvious reasons. What I'd really like to emphasize, and you, again, take it back to staff, and I know that there's great caseworkers, but there's an inconsistency in some of the follow-up, and I'm going to get into some of the real quick questions that I'm going to throw at you. But what I would really love to see is that a caseworker would take that time with that individual and say, what brought you here, and where do you really want to go? And then put that individual on a plan. And I think this is where the caseloads would decrease. Because what I've seen happening is that the bank statement showing zero, last year's income tax, and a place of residence. And whether or not you qualify, you get a check. But then that caseworker doesn't come back into that individual's life over the next year until something happens. And we have to take something away from that individual. What I'd love to see is that caseworker say, you know what? You want education? I'm going to set you up with this individual. If you want a job, this is the person to call. And it's the holistic approach that I hope someday the department will take on and give the caseworkers. Because there's a misconception that caseworkers are actually social workers, and we know they're not. Some may be, but what I'd love to see is that when an individual comes, we put them on that 3-month plan, that 6-month plan, that 9-month plan. And then in a year's time, this is where you're going to be, and you know what? I'm going to be following you. I'm going to be following up on you, and I'm going to be behind you. Because that, to me, is telling that individual, you know what? We do care. We know we can only give you this much, but we're going to help you get to that next step. And like I said, it's important because I think the taxpayers would buy into that. I really do. And if we fund that, and if we get staff to actively pursue that, I really think society would buy into that because that individual is going to know that we are behind them. We're not just going to be there to call them up and say, well, you know what? Someone called us and said your boyfriend was staying with you, so we're going to cut you off, or your medical's cut off for this reason, or you didn't get the medical note in time, so your bus pass is cut off. That's no good. People don't feel good about that. If we're really going to do this right and bring the caseloads down, and I know some people are going to have to be on the system, and that's the part where we actually have to fund those people, make sure that they're healthy enough so that they're not being carried by the burden of the health department. A couple quick zingers. The medical notes. What I've noticed in the last year, my assistant asked me to bring this up. The medical notes. We know that individuals have to have the medical documentation in order to have special diet monies available, in order to have bus passes made available, or medical transportation. What we've noticed this past year was that there was an inconsistency with some of the caseworkers. Some caseworkers would cut you off right away. So when the check comes out in January, I had a number of calls that said, I lost my bus pass, or my special diet's gone. No one told me, okay? And we understand there is a responsibility. But then we had caseworkers that would call you a month out and say, look, Joe, you know, you have to go get this medical documentation into me in order for this to continue. And the reason I bring this up is that, again, it's something that I would like you to take back and take into consideration and maybe possibly implement again. Why can't we 3 months out towards the end of the year just send out a memo with the pay stub, or have the caseworker, I know they deal with a lot of cases, but if we even electronically notify the client that their medical is up and it's going to have to be renewed. Because what happens is, or when it happens, when that stuff, when the special diet's cut and the bus pass is cut, and like I said earlier, a lot of individuals, to be honest with you, they're using that to supplement their rent. So when that's gone, as you know, it's crisis. And unfortunately, I deal with a lot of crisis situations. And you know, I say to my assistant, we go out into the community in different community focus groups, and we talk to people. You know, if you feel that there's an issue coming up, tell me a little bit beforehand. If you lose the tip of your finger, I can save the rest. But if you come to me and your whole finger's cut off, I can't save the finger anymore. So come to me as the issue is starting, or if you feel that there's an inadequacy taking place, and we can correct that. But that piece, when it's cut off, when you lose that extra $87 off your check, that is dramatic in that individual's life. So if we can remedy that and take it back, and maybe you can comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank my honourable colleague for the opportunity to again receive good advice. You know, the whole issue of client service delivery and staff training, we've made that a priority. We have wonderful staff, and I know my honourable colleague agrees with that. And Mr. Chair, they're pushed to the limit. Like they work really hard, and I know that the consistency in the delivery is what we're all talking about here. We can have the best policies in the world, and if they aren't consistently being adhered to or being delivered, then it's ineffective. So I've made note about the medical note situation. You're absolutely right. There's no reason why that can't be we can't look at that in a proactive manner instead of waiting for it to be reactionary after it happens. And the other George did lean in and say that's a good idea. So we're making note of that. We'll take that back. I'm always open to feedback, and it's important that I hear about the inconsistencies, and it's important that that line of communication stay open, because without that, we are just in a void, in a vacuum, without that knowing. And certainly, it would not be the intention of me as minister or the staff to ever cause that kind of grief intentionally. And so anything that we can do to prevent that from happening, Mr. Chair, we will certainly take under advisement.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because you know, the worst thing that happens to me is an individual, and again, it happened last night. My caseworker hates me. I don't know why. You know, I need a bus pass for medical reasons, you know, but he just won't give it to me. And you know, who's your caseworker? You know, I've had great dealings with this caseworker. You know, give me a call tomorrow and we'll look at this and we'll make a connection. And I've had great success when I bring that individual into the office and actually sit down with the caseworker, right? Because it's dramatic, and when it does happen, and that's the issue. I mean, I hate the department, they're not helping me, I hate my caseworker, why did they do this, right? And again, I agree, the onus is on the individual, but the caseworker on the other end is making a certain amount in their salary, and an individual living on less than $700-800 a month, that's a crisis when that happens. And that has to be, somehow we have to accommodate that. Again, I'm hearing, and I know last year you sent out the nice glossy newsletter with a lot of facts and figures, and I know we criticized you for that. And you came back and said, this is information, we're providing Nova Scotians with information, that's great. But one of the things that you said there, one of the figures that you quoted was that there was a certain percentage of individuals that felt that they were respected when they came to the department. Now, again, it's a difficult situation when somebody approaches the department for assistance. I'm wondering if you can tell me how confident you are that all caseworkers are providing the clients when they come to the office with all the information about what they actually qualify for. And I say that for two reasons. Because again, this year, I've heard the same as when I first came in 2006, is that, well, they didn't tell me about this. They didn't tell me about the special diet. They didn't show me the medical form. They didn't tell me of this employment program. I didn't know about this. And that's a frustration of mine, because when an issue comes to the office, like I said, I'm spending a lot of time coordinating services for this individual. And you know what, that's fine, because like I said, it's the holistic approach. If I can get that individual set up, because the first thing I do is I call the supervisor and say, look, let's sit down with this individual and get them set on the right path. Let's find out what they're actually able to be qualified for. But that should happen right away. So I want to know if you're still here, if you might be hearing that, or how confident you are that the caseworkers are actually giving and providing that information to clients when they come. And I also want to know if, because I've heard this and I need to be sure on it, and I hope you can tell me, do caseworkers receive, or is there a bonus system in place if they do come in under budget? If you can clarify that for me.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, I thank my honourable colleague. A couple of pieces that I would like to reply to. And again, I know we had the whole chat of the information flyer going out. And again, in this House, sometimes we bounce back and forth politically for political reasons. But I wanted to say that information piece that we did send out to Nova Scotians, the response that we got back was very interesting, because we almost were victims of our own doing, because we put the information out there about our programs, and literally the phones were ringing off the hook. And people were saying, I had no idea you had programs for seniors. I had no idea I could have a subsidy for childcare. You're kidding, there's a housing program going on? Well, what about this? Here's my case, here's my situation. So we put our information out there. We did create some business for ourselves, and I know we do talk about whether or not the actual communicating of that is necessary, and I do again state that I think it's important, because I think it's important people know where that $912 million is going, and I think it's important that people know it's there for them to access, and so again I make that comment. I wanted to make a couple of points about my confidence in the staff. We have, as I've said numerous times, we have amazing staff at the department, and they deal with some of the most challenging situations that anyone in the civil service, in government, in the province could have to deal with. I am extremely confident in the ability of the frontline staff, the supervisors, senior management, right up the line. I know that they all have their hands full, and I know that the consistency is the piece. We orient all of our staff on a regular basis, and then we challenge them by changing something, putting a new policy in place, and so we have to continually make sure that those regional supervisors get the information so they can filter it down through to their folks in the front line. I think about even the deputy goes on tour and goes right into the offices and speaks to our staff. Anytime I'm around any of the departments, I directly go to the frontline staff. What are your concerns? What are your challenges? So I know that there's an opportunity there to receive and give feedback, but I will take your concerns about that inconsistency back to the level where it belongs, because it is that consistency that is extremely important for Nova Scotians, as much as it is for the the bureaucracy of our department. It's extremely important that Nova Scotians know if they need us, they come and they get treated with that consistent respect and that ability to access the programming. Absolutely no, staff do not receive bonuses for any budget over or under. No, they don't, not at all. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that clarification, because it is, I've heard it recently, actually, and I heard it when I first came in 2006. Well, okay, that's got to be a little bit of a misconception there, and I'll dig into this a little bit more to find out. But again, that's the feeling, and you talked about the flyer, and I agree. But if we do that up front, you wouldn't have had to advertise about all the programs. You know what I'm saying? Again, that's that holistic approach that I hope someday we really take on when an individual approaches the department for help. And I think if we allow them the knowledge, or give them the knowledge of everything that they are or potentially are entitled to or have the opportunity for, we wouldn't have to advertise all the good stuff we're doing. So thank you for that. Keeping with the ESIA, I want to talk about Harvest Connection. And you mentioned Winter Works in your opening. You didn't mention Harvest Connection. We know the benefits of both programs, absolutely. I have said at both poverty forums that we had over the last number of years, I know I raised the issue when Harvest Connection starts each year. I'm wondering if it's possible, or if you've taken in consideration in the department of expanding that into other sectors. And the reason I say that is it is an opportunity for an individual receiving community services to make that additional $3,000 a year. And the difference in that $3,000 in someone's life who's living on less than $8,000 a year is immense. The difference to that individual that's able to participate in a program like Winter Works or Harvest Connection might be the difference in allowing that individual to have the courage or build up the self-esteem to take on an actual full-time job. So I'm wondering if you can tell me if the department has or is considering on expanding that program to other sectors. Because the way I see it is, if I can get a single mother who we can get her some childcare to go out and work at McDonald's, work at Tim Hortons. We know what the minimum wage is now. If we can expand that into other sectors, I think we would have a real good opportunity at giving people a little bit more incentive on getting off the system. So if you can answer that, that would be great.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm sure it will be something that will come up again in these estimates debates, because it's an issue that I've shared with both sides of the House. Harvest Connection is a great program. It has challenges. We recognize that. We have the best intentions, and so we have to make sure that what we know Harvest Connection can do, we're truly able to do it through the program. It's meant to provide that extra incentive for individuals who are able to actually go to the agricultural sector or to the Christmas tree harvesting sector and actually get out there and earn some extra dollars, not be penalized for that, while helping that shortage in the labor market. And again, like I say, it's great in its creation and in the idea behind it. Some of the challenges that we've seen with it, and not that long ago, I don't have the date exact in my mind, but I did convene a meeting with representatives from the Christmas tree producers of Nova Scotia, the Federation of Agriculture. There were some good folks from the Annapolis Valley there to help me out with ideas and input. Staff from our department, from the Employment Support division of the department, because I really needed to understand why we weren't having greater uptake. It is a good program, and why we weren't having greater uptake. Some of the challenges that were identified for us were, I'm sure, challenges that you're well aware of. Transportation was the biggest challenge. The whole issue of transporting individuals, providing that transportation link so people could actually get to the harvesting of the crops and get to the harvesting of the Christmas trees. So that transportation challenge is the biggest one that we encountered. I had growers say to me, I will pay for the work boots. I'm happy to provide the gear, the rain gear or the work gear. Like, I'm happy to meet you halfway. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to get some workers. I'll meet you halfway. I'll pay for all of it. But I need to be able to get those people to the site. And so that was one of the biggest challenges, and it's interesting, again, like I say, I know it'll come up again, but it's interesting you raise it. We do have an ongoing team looking at how we can better the program as it exists right now, how and if we can expand it, and I know that that's been part of the poverty strategy, the working groups, work that they've been doing is how do we take some of the programs that exist now and how do we make them better so that they can address some of the issues that they're working with. So the whole idea of continuing to look at it, to expand it if we can, to make sure it does what we initially put it in place to do. Those are all part of the ongoing consultation. So yes, I'm open to expanding it, but we need to make sure that it works how we initially meant it to work before we can even expand it anywhere else. So I will keep the members updated on how those consultations go, and I know that we have meetings planned for the real near future, because the harvest season is very quickly upon us, and we can't have, in my opinion, there's no sense having a program if it isn't effective. So we have to make it effective so it truly does what it's intended to do. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. New Chair. Thanks to the Minister for that answer. The reason I bring it up, obviously, is because I can't provide that program for somebody living in HRM, okay? And there are a large number of social assistance recipients in HRM that would benefit from an expansion of that program that would allow them to go into the retail sector, that would allow them to go into the food service industry. So I'm hoping that we can get that program to the point where it's more effective and that we can actually expand it, because I think that would be an important piece. Now, you bring up the poverty consultations. And again, back in the fall, I was critical of this, not of the actual initiative of a poverty reduction strategy, because I have stated in this House that I believe it is the responsibility of any government that sits on that side of the House to have implemented and improve upon, and that is a poverty reduction strategy. And we've seen that initiative in other countries, we've seen it in other provinces, and I think we have to uphold that. The thing that I was critical of in the two consultations was two things. One was and I know it was raised by my colleague from Dartmouth South Portland Valley earlier in the session regarding the lack of women's organizations that participated. But more so, I'm concerned with the fact that, the Standing Committee on Community Services has spent 2 years listening to organizations and individuals, getting and gathering information, and actually coming up with recommendations out of the poverty forums. And we provided that to the department. Some of the initiatives have been taken into consideration, but not all. And one of the things that I said back in the debates in the fall session was the fact that I honestly believe that in 2 years in the poverty reduction strategy, or 2 forums on poverty, we've come up with some real good concrete recommendations that I know this side of the House has been discussing with organizations for the last 8, 9, 10 years. And in the fall, what I said was that I believe that there are things that we can implement now that would impact people's lives as far as reducing poverty. I want to encourage the department to continue on. I believe June we're going to see some results or a response from that task force, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But one of the questions I want to end on is around the ESIA program is the 70-30 split. And I bring that up because it was a recommendation that was brought up 2 years in a row at the poverty reduction forums. And I'm wondering if there's been some movement on that, if there's been some consideration of one of the proposals that we put forward was a sliding model, or lowering that maybe 50-50, 60-40, something. I'm just wondering if there has been any discussion in the department on the 70-30 split.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for bringing up the Poverty Reduction Working Group. There's no question that the challenges of tackling poverty are vast, they're multi-departmental, they're societal, and my honourable colleague mentioned that other provinces and countries have embarked on this very same task. And it's not easy to try and grasp the complexity of the issue of poverty. We in Canada don't even have a clear definition for where the poverty line exists. And so you can ask anyone their definition of poverty and you get a different result. And so that's a huge challenge to even start with. We all know what it means to us in our communities, what it means to us in our constituencies, what it means to us every day. And so trying to pull all of that together isn't an easy task. I commend the Poverty Working Group for the great work that they've been doing. We had consultation, and now the group is working hard. We had over 1,300 responses from Nova Scotians, very valuable pieces of information on how we might best tackle poverty. Some of them were very simple, direct, straight to the point. Others were more complex and broader, and they talked about some of those broader scoped philosophical ideas that we all know are more challenging than actually, doing something tangible. But they're very important because they go directly to the issue of breaking down cycles, breaking down barriers, etc. So I want to applaud, for the record, as I'm sure I'll have the opportunity to do over the next number of hours, I want to applaud the tremendous work of that working group. And I do want to address the issue of the makeup of that group. We all know how challenging it is to put a group of individuals together and have them complete a task. There's no magic recipe. We took a broad cross-section of advocacy groups, of associations, government departments, and we put them together to do a very serious challenging job. We did not intentionally leave anyone out. We truly felt that we had a broad spectrum. The issue of female representation on the working group was raised through a letter campaign, was raised here in the House by the member for Dartmouth South Portland Valley. And though I know that the statement has been made that there isn't enough female representation, we do have a broad scope. The FemGEP group, who represent women's groups across the province, sit on that working group, and although they don't want, they would never pretend to be the voice for everyone, it was their voice that we put on there, knowing that they held a broad representation of women's groups across the province. So again, there was no intentional leaving anyone off. We just felt it was very important for that group to get to work. And so that was the reason we didn't do any additions we felt it was important for them to get to work so we could fulfill our commitment to present to Nova Scotians those tangible ways that we would be able to put on the ground. Now, having said that, we aren't standing still. We aren't waiting for the working group to come to us with all of the magical answers, because we know that we have to work at this each and every day. We co-chair it with the Minister of Labour. The increase in the minimum wage was one of those, the acceptance of those recommendations was one of those immediate ways that we looked at tackling this from the very beginning. The issue of lowering the daily parent fee for childcare was another way that we could immediately tackle it. Raising the income eligibility for subsidy was another immediate way that we could tackle it. So some of those ways that we were able to immediately get at some of the broader issue of poverty, those were the immediate tangible ways that we could, and we'll continue to do that right up until receiving the report, and then we'll look at how do we now take these great recommendations that we know are coming, how do we actually get those to fall into place with the initiatives that we're doing currently. Mr. Chair, I have to admit, I leaned into George and I said, I don't know what the 70-30 split is. So I'm going to have to ask my colleague to explain to me which exactly, what concept he was referring to with the 70-30 split.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I stated, this was one of the recommendations that initially came out of the first poverty forum. And the 70-30 split is if I'm receiving the clawback, okay? The clawback. And just for clarification for those that may be listening at home to our interesting conversation, when I'm receiving assistance and I seek employment, I have to then go and claim that on my income statements up to the full amount. And then there's up to a certain amount. I believe it may still be $150, but the department claws back 70% and allows that individual 30%. The reason I bring this up is, like I said, it was one of the initial recommendations from the poverty forum, and the second year when we heard back from individuals, they said that this was an important one because, again, it was an incentive for an individual who was taking on a job. And if we could get it where it was somewhere apart, where an individual was making at least a little bit more than minimum wage at the time, it would be a good incentive for them to get off the system. So I'm wondering if that was looked at, the 70-30 clawback.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I assumed that it was the clawback, but I wanted confirmation just to make sure I didn't get up and speak to something that wasn't being asked of me. So yes, we do recognize that that was raised by the Standing Committee on Community Services through their poverty forum that they held. We, of course, indicated at the time that we do offer certain other incentives. You know, the income tax refund is certainly one of those opportunities where folks are permitted to retain those dollars. The Harvest Connection was another way to try and get those extra dollars into the hands of the clients. The increase in the subsidized childcare that the portable subsidies with the childcare seats, and of course the whole issue of the poverty reduction working group. I would be surprised if this wasn't part of their recommendation. And so as we move forward with those recommendations, we will challenge the department to look at how best we consider all of those recommendations, and I'm expecting to see that one as part of a recommendation, and so we will be looking forward to dealing with it at that point.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to continue with the Career Seek program, but we're short on time, so I'll save that one. You made mention in your opening address about family resource centers, and absolutely beneficial to all of our communities that have the opportunity to have them in there. I have over the last year had some concerns with both the Bayers Westwood Centre and the Dartmouth Family Resource Centre, in and around the executive director positions. In particular, Dartmouth North had or experienced several staff turnovers. An executive director had come in from the U.S. There was a lot of difficulties, personality conflicts, and a lot of staff were eliminated or chose to move on. Actually, there was some human rights cases cited as well. I probably should have. That probably should have been one I would have came to the department with earlier. But both Bayers Westwood and Dartmouth Family Resource Centers are important pieces to those communities. One of the things that came out of the discussions with some of the parents, however, was the fact that over the years, and I know the department only funds so much, and there's other funding partners like United Way, but one of the things that families have said to me in Dartmouth North is that there's been a lack of professional services given to parents now than there was several years ago when the Dartmouth Family Resource Center opened up. So I'm wondering, and these are important pieces, it's not just the parenting courses, but the psychologists, those individuals that would come in and maybe see some clients, that opportunity is no longer
Order,
there
please.
at the Dartmouth Family
Order,
Resource
please.
Center.
There's a little bit noise, too much noise in the chamber. If we could just lower the decibel level, that would be great. Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's an issue because, again, we're dealing with young families that are feeling the challenges, and to have those services in place, I think, is important because they do deal with a variety of new mothers or parents that have had their children taken away. So those professional services being in those centers are important. So I'm wondering if you can just speak to that as to whether there's been a decline because of funding from the department. Chuck.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I know my honourable colleague shares my appreciation for the family resource centres. They truly are wonderful. I have had the opportunity to visit many of them across the province, and I'm never, it never ceases to amaze me what they can do. They can stretch a dollar better than any other group that I have encountered. It's amazing. They take the dollars that they get and they create programs for families and for children, for youth. It's tremendous what they do, and that's both urban and rural. And certainly I was pleased that staff had met with the new executive director of the Dartmouth North Family Resource Centre just 3 or 4 days ago, and I know that things are going much better there. And when we talk again, I'd be happy to talk about the core funding that we've put in place for family resource centres. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to draw the members' attentions to the West Gallery. Mr. Speaker, we have a special guest in the West Gallery today, Mr. Brad Pye, the son of former MLA Jerry Pye. Brad was born and raised in Dartmouth, now works in the Middle East, and I hear the groans of the member from Timberley Prospect on having another Pye in the house. Brad was born in Dartmouth North and works in the Middle East for the National Democratic Institute of Internal Affairs. He's working in the field of democratic development. Brad spent 2 years in Iraq and now is working in the challenging political arena of the Palestine territories. I'm pleased to inform the House that Brad is also the nominated candidate for the NDP in Dartmouth Cole Harbour riding. I'd like to ask all members in the House to please have Brad rise and give him a warm welcome.
Welcome to all our guests today. We'll now recognize, order please. We'll now recognize the honourable member for Richmond.
Merci. Et puis peut-être je pourrais même poser des questions à la ministre en français. Je pense que c'est très intéressant pour les deux fonctionnaires qui t'assistent aujourd'hui, voir s'ils peuvent vous donner de l'avis sur les questions posées en français. Minister, we could have some fun and do it completely in French, but I was commenting it would be interesting to see whether your two staff would be of. Minister, as I'm sure you're well aware, Community Services is a department that affects all of our ridings, and there are some particular issues I wanted to raise with you on behalf of the many clients that you have in Richmond County. One of the first I wanted to raise is that a couple of years ago, your predecessor, who's now the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources, I raised with him the issue of the mileage rates being paid to clients of community services, especially for those attending medical trips. In Richmond County, it's not uncommon that people will have to travel either to Sydney, Antigonish, and then many times up to Halifax. At the time I brought those concerns to the Minister, I believe the price of gas was in the range of 90 cents to $1. And I'm pleased that the Minister did respond by implementing an increase in the mileage rates back then, and there was an increase in the amount paid for a round trip for these medical appointments. Now, I was trying to, in preparing for these estimates, I was trying to reflect on when would that last increase have been, and the fact it struck me that you've been the Minister of Community Services since 2006, so obviously it had to be before then. So it's approximately 2 years since we've had a last increase in mileage rates. Now, as I mentioned to you, when I was pushing for that increase, the price of gas was around 90 cents $1. Well, we all know It's over $1.30 today. So it's becoming a significant problem for clients in my area because of the fact that the price has gone up. Their reimbursement rate has not reflected the increased cost of fuel. So I'm curious as to what comments the minister can provide on what her intentions are in light of the high price of gas, in light of when the last increase was made, whether there are any intentions to increase the mileage rate and increase the rate for return trips for medical appointments.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ben oui, ça va être mon plaisir de continuer cette conversation en français, mais je ne pense pas que des autres dans cette chambre vont être aussi contents avec ça. So, Mr. Chair, I will not provide my answers in French, even though it would provide me great pleasure, because it's been a while since I've been able to use my French. But that wouldn't be fair to the other members in the House, and I'm sure Mr. Chair would have a problem with me doing that. But I welcome my honourable colleague from Richmond County to the discussion this morning. I know that he and I have had many opportunities to discuss some of the challenges, particularly with some of the seniors programs that we have in place through the department, some of the programs for services for persons with disabilities, and so I'm looking forward to some of that interaction this morning with him as well. Specifically, Mr. Chair, when it comes to the challenges with the mileage rates, I will let the member know that we did this year in the budget increase the mileage rates for foster families as an acknowledgement that we knew that the challenges were there. And so that I will offer to him as a concrete example that we do know that that challenge is very real. So we did that for the foster families this year, Mr. Chair, and we were pleased to be able to do that. The income assistance rates, of course, we have increased those for the last 5 consecutive years. This year's increase will represent a 15.6% increase. I know that while that is a significant increase, it doesn't address the specific issue of the mileage rates, as my honourable colleague has raised. But I make that point for clarity. We know that the transportation costs are greater for clients who would be in those more remote, rural communities. And while we do provide a transportation allowance, and we do provide dollars for those medical trips back and forth. Currently, there is no increase proposal, but it would be something that I would be more than happy to take back to the department as a recommendation.
Honourable Member for Richmond.
I'm going to give you an example of where this really hits home. I have a family that it's husband and wife, and the wife has kidney disease. She requires to be on dialysis 3 days a week. They are currently traveling from Petit de Gras down to Sydney on the old number 4 highway 3 days a week. The wear and tear on their vehicle plus the cost of fuel is such that they just can't make ends meet anymore. I know that your staff down in St. Peter's have done everything possible that they can, and it's certainly not a criticism of them. I commend them for everything they've been able to do to assist this family, but at the end of the day, it's almost impossible to be able to make ends meet when the mileage rate has not increased. And maybe it's not a question of increasing the mileage rate overall, it may be a question of whether the department can look at, when it comes to medical travel, of having a reimbursement that's more reflective of the cost involved. And as the minister indicated, I do represent a rural, remote area, and unfortunately a drive down to Sydney is about an hour and a half, and the drive up to Antigonish isn't much shorter. Not many areas find themselves with that much traveling distance, but I do. And unfortunately with dialysis, it's not a luxury. It's a life and death matter, and it's a necessity of life. So I'm wondering, in light of that, when I give her that example, would the minister be prepared, and if it's not an across-the-board change, would she at least be prepared to look at the unique situation we do have in Richmond County and review the current rates that are being paid for travel, especially for medical appointments for clients in Richmond?
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again, thank my honourable colleague for the opportunity to discuss this. And I do want to thank him for the kind words about the staff, because I'll tell you, the staff are extremely creative. Some of the creative ways that I've heard that they have been able to help Nova Scotians within the boundaries of the policies and the procedure are nothing short of miracles. And I know that they do try very hard. And that specific example that my honourable colleague presented is very real. And it's not enough for me to stand and to quote figures and facts when situations like that are presented, because those are very real, very life and death situations, as my honourable colleague has mentioned. And the $39 million that we budget for special needs is a figure when you compare it to the story of the family. And so I do offer that figure, though, as a representation of the commitment that we have to the special needs division of the Income Assistance Program. But I do know that Program Division is reviewing this exact discussion as we speak. They are looking at the transportation costs. They're looking at the medical issue, and so we look forward to those recommendations coming forward, and we will certainly make sure that this specific example is referenced in that review.
The honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Madam Minister, and I'm pleased to hear that. And again, it may not be a question of having to do a change throughout the entire province. You've got a unique situation, which I believe requires a unique solution. Right now, the staff in St. Peter's are working within the guidelines that are provided to them. There is some allotments for special circumstances, I realize that, and I believe this might be a circumstance that would fall under these special circumstances, but it requires a change in Halifax to let the field offices know that they do have the authority in these circumstances. And it might even be a matter of the minister having a discussion with her colleague, the Minister of Health, because especially when it comes to dialysis, right now I'm working with the Minister of Health to try to bring dialysis services closer to Richmond County, which will basically address this very concern. But until that happens, and to be able to do that, to bring those dialysis services at the Straight Richmond Hospital, which would be a benefit for my constituents, the Premier's constituents, and even some of the constituents of the Minister of Fisheries and possibly even the Minister of Economic Development, to have that dialysis service provided at the Straight Richmond Hospital. But that's a $2 million investment. So I'm aware that that's going to take some time, but these families need some relief during that period, and right now they just can't make ends meet. And one of the options that one family turned to is saying we have no means of transportation. They've called in the ambulance. So our EHS service is being used to transport patients for dialysis services, and we all know what the cost to government of that is. So that's certainly not cost effective. So that's not a message we want to be sending out to families with dialysis, that the EHS is an option, because it's not what EHS is meant to do. But who can afford to continually travel 3 times a week from Petit de Gras or from anywhere in Richmond County down to Sydney for dialysis services with the price of gas the way it is, the price of insurance and the wear and tear on the vehicle? So for the clients of community services, they're calling me and saying, you know, we just can't do it anymore. And what solutions do you have? And I don't have any solutions. And you know, I commend them for the fact that they're even able to make this kind of commitment, because for the most part, whoever the individual is receiving dialysis services is not the person who's driving. They need someone else to drive them. So it takes someone else to be able to go there and with them 3 times a week, to drive, to sit there while they're taking their dialysis, and to bring them back home. So it's a tremendous commitment, but financially it's to the point where they just can't make ends meet anymore. So I am hoping that the minister will take that into consideration, and will hopefully be able to identify some funds which could be used towards these special circumstances, especially with dialysis. And the Minister of Health, I'm sure, can provide you with the figures. There's not an overabundance of families, fortunately, but for those who are, and that they happen to be clients of community services, they need help. And I know, again, that the staff in St. Peter's has found all the creative ways that they possibly could to help, but there's a limit. And they're aware that there's a limit as well, and the only person that can change that limit is yourself. So I do hope the minister will look into that. One of the other issues that I wanted to raise with the minister is the issue of seniors housing complexes. I know that the minister has been announcing elevators for a number of the areas around the province. Now in Richmond County we have a number of seniors complexes. About half are single-story units, the other half are two-story units. For those who are on the second level, there's great concerns about being able to carry groceries and other items up and down the stairs, or even as their health may start to fail for themselves, being able to climb up those stairs. Our seniors complexes are an important part of keeping our seniors in our communities, providing them with a safe form of housing, but accessing that second story is becoming a bigger and bigger issue as seniors get up in age. And so in light of the fact that the minister has been making some announcements of elevators throughout the province, I'm wondering if this budget is going to provide for, once again, a series of elevators to be put in seniors complexes throughout Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague. And just to go back to the issue that he had before he brought up the elevator, I totally agree that the cooperation amongst departments is key. And the issue that my honourable colleague brought today about the Department of Health and the Department of Community Services talking to make sure that in those very unique cases, as the one that my honourable colleague brought forward, it only makes sense. And you know, heaven forbid we not use a little common sense every once in a while, but that would only make sense. So I will specifically take the issue of those unique cases. And thankfully, as the honourable member said as well, thankfully there aren't that many of those unique cases, but there would be enough that it would pose real challenges to those families. So I will take those unique cases and with the Minister of Health, look at, along with this review that's going on right now, to look at creative ways, just as my honourable colleague suggested, because you're absolutely right that we do not. It doesn't make sense to be using the ambulances, which is not the intention, as transportation links. If we can do something else more creative, and it's not about, you know, it's not always about saving those dollars, but in this case, it would accomplish both. It would provide that life-saving treatment for those families, and it would also be much better for the finances of the province than to have the ambulances providing that service. So we will look at that. The issue of elevators. It never ceases to amaze me how challenging the elevator issue is, and I wanted to make a couple of comments before I got into to the specific reply about elevators and the go forward. 86% of our units will be accessible after April of 2008 this year. By the fall of 2008, 86% of available senior citizens housing in Nova Scotia will be fully accessible. And so that's a really great figure. It's the other percent that aren't that is the challenge that my colleague is bringing up today. And so I recognize that. We do try to be creative. We do try to provide that first floor level of accommodation versus having someone not being able to be mobile. So we do offer that as an option. Certainly we have a team under the leadership of Gary Porter right now working on a province-wide strategy for the implementation and the building of the remaining elevators that would see our seniors complexes fully accessible. And I know that he and his team are working very hard to put together a plan that deals with regional accessibility, making sure that we have housing, adequate housing in the different regions that are accessible, ensuring that we do so to the best of our financial ability. It was absolutely shocking to me when we put out the tenders for that first round of elevators, the 15 elevators that we put the tenders out for, and we estimated, we budgeted approximately $155,000 per elevator. The tenders were coming in at over $300,000. It was absolutely staggering. And so we've had to take a long, hard look at how we can best use the resources that we've got, and while not reneging on any of those commitments that we made. So I wanted to make that notification for my honourable colleague as well, so he'd recognize the challenges that we have with that steel industry and the elevator accessibility issue. So again, yes, Gary Porter is working on a province-wide strategy. I have taken the specific request that my colleague presented to me in the House to Gary and to staff to include in that province-wide strategy to ensure that all of the requests are dealt with, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm just going to make one final point, and then my colleague from Dartmouth North is going to take over for a few minutes while I have to step out, and I will be back. But that 86% figure is a great figure, but I know when I'm going to repeat that figure back in Richmond County, they're going to say, well, what's the chances that there's only 14% of the province that's not accessible? And we have, through my calculation, 6 seniors complexes in Richmond County that are not accessible. So that is a challenge for us, and I hope the minister will take that into consideration, because we have our seniors complex in Petit de Gras, we have the one in Discousse, we have 2 in St. Peter's, we have 1 in River Bourgeois and 1 in Lardouez that are all 2-story facilities. And that is where the challenges lie, and as I said, none of our seniors complexes in Richmond County have an elevator as it is. So in light of those figures, I'm certainly hoping that the minister will have some good news for the people of Richmond County as she's putting together her list of which communities will be seeing some of these elevators this year. It's hard to choose which one should receive it, but one has to start somewheres, and I'm certainly hoping that the minister will take that into consideration, and she may have some comments she wishes to provide on that, but I'll leave it at that for now and hear her response, and then give the floor to my colleague from Dartmouth North.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again, thank my honourable colleague. And I did not use the figure of 86% to pretend that I don't realize that that means a handful, and I know my honourable colleague knows that. There are still 125 seniors complexes across the province that are part of that remaining percent. So I certainly wasn't being flippant in that, and I know he recognizes that. I wish it were. I wish it were as easy as 4 or 5, but the 125. But we have made great gains, and we are very pleased with the gains that we've made. And as I mentioned, part of Gary Porter's province-wide strategy deals with regional concerns. We need to make sure that we have adequate regional. Depending on where the seniors complex is in that region. Is there another one next door that folks could move to? Or is there another option available close by? So that regional concern is, that regional component is part of that review. And so we will look forward to seeing that review and seeing the provincial layout, and we will continue to invest each and every year within the budget, of course, in that accessibility component for our seniors in the province. And I will certainly make sure that the good folks of Richmond County are included in that review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few questions for the minister. And the first one I want to ask is on the housing grant, which is always a very important thing for low-income Nova Scotians, and it's an excellent program that the department operates. The income threshold on that, I believe, is $32,000 now. Is that correct?
The Honourable Minister.
Yes. That varies. There's one, and also with that, normally, I know when we assist people filling out the applications for that, they use the income tax summary to verify income. Now, in the income summary, typically the child tax credit isn't shown as income on your income tax normally. But I understand that the Department of Housing uses the child tax credit as income, and indeed, in many cases, it puts individuals over the limit that for income that they would get. In other words, eliminates the possibility of getting a grant. And I don't think that's appropriate, because typically, if you have a couple of children and you're struggling every day, and today with an income, of $25,000 or $30,000 a year, it's pretty tough to make ends meet. And then if you take that and need some repairs on your home, I'd just like the minister to verify that.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I welcome my honourable colleague to the discussion. The whole issue of household income limits for the housing programs is one that we discuss routinely in question period and in estimates debates. We do have categories. As my honourable colleague mentioned, there are different categories for different levels of programs that are available. It depends on your region where you live, the rural versus the the urban, the number of people or the number of bedrooms as we would call it. So those income levels do vary. And my honourable colleague is well aware that we work those household income levels in conjunction with the federal government. And it is under the jurisdiction of the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation that those are set. And so the inclusion of the child tax benefit is a requirement of the federal government through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And so the honourable member is correct, it is included as income.
The Honourable Member for Preston.
I also understand that these agreements are put in place through negotiation between the province and the federal government. Has there been any efforts on behalf of the province, understanding what our situation is, particularly in rural areas, to have that child tax credit eliminated as income in the whole process of the grants? So really my question is, has the province done anything to try to change that situation so indeed that income wouldn't be shown? And it's particularly important for a single mother or a single father that's struggling to try to look after their home and their families. And I was just wondering if the province has entered into any type of negotiations to see if that can be eliminated.
Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's a pleasure to see you in the seat, Mr. Chair.
Just trying it out.
Yes, to my honourable colleague, the programs that we have, the household income levels that are set with the federal government, we set those in conjunction with the federal government for simplicity. We use the same program, so we don't deviate and separate ours and make it different. It's for simplicity. It's for for the accountability and the ease with the programs. So they are included. Those income levels do reflect the child tax benefit. I did want to point out, though, for my honourable colleague, that though it isn't the answer to his specific question, we don't claw back that child tax benefit. We don't consider it as part of the child care subsidy issue. So we do recognize that there are advantages, that there are times when we need to discount that, and we do try to do that, Mr. Chair.
Member for Preston.
And I appreciate that, because to raise a family today, as the honourable member knows, is very, very expensive. My real question was, has there been any negotiation on behalf of the province to try to eliminate this for the housing grants? Because those agreements are signed between the province and the federal government with CMHC every year. And from what I understand, there's the possibility of negotiating different things in and out. And I can understand why the department makes it seamless with the same requirements federally and provincially. It does make a lot of sense. But if we could negotiate it differently so those could be removed, that would help a lot more people in Nova Scotia.
Minister of Community Services.
And specifically, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague for the question. We do meet regularly with the federal government in negotiations regarding these income levels. It is not something today that the federal government are considering, because it would require a cross-country change for them. But I will certainly indicate to my honourable colleague across the way that at the next meeting with CMHC, we as a province are prepared to raise that issue.
Member for Preston.
Yes, I'm very pleased to hear that, because I think it would make a big difference to a lot of Nova Scotians that are indeed in need of having badly needed home repairs done. On the grants, has the government considered increasing, I know some of this is a federal and provincial agreement, so it takes a long time to change, but has the province considered, in particularly in case of seniors, we have many seniors in the province living well below the poverty level, trying to stay in their homes, and rightfully so, they should as long as they possibly can, of increasing the grant program to the seniors and make it better to help with more, instead of just emergency grants, but maybe help with more energy efficiency in their homes. Seniors are faced with huge oil bills now, and typically the homes aren't well insulated. Their windows need to be replaced, and I know the department does some of that when they do cause problems with the buildings, but and more emphasis on energy efficiency. As to fill an oil tank now, from what I understand, luckily I don't have one. I've got electric heat, so I don't know if I'm lucky or not, but it costs somewhere between $1,000 and $1,200 to fill an empty oil tank now. So if you get a senior that's making $9,000 or $10,000 a year, you can see that very quickly they can't heat their homes. So something could be done to help them renovate their properties to make them more efficient. And I stress it, and particularly for seniors. Is there any movement in that direction, any consideration of the department for improving the homes and energy conservation? I know there's some programs through the province, but now in the federal government, but they really don't help the seniors because you've got to spend a pile of money to get a little bit of money back, and they don't have the money to start. And if they do get a grant back through the program that's run now, it's just not affordable for seniors. So we really need to do something that's direct and immediate for them.
Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again to my honourable colleague across the way. The issue of home repairs and grants and loans is one that is becoming increasingly more challenging with our aging population. And of course, we all know, I've made the statement in this House, and I know everyone would be in agreement with this. More and more, we have seniors who are choosing to stay in their own homes, who truly want to be in their own homes. And when seniors want to stay in their own homes, I think it's incumbent upon us to be able to offer the programming that allows them to do just that. And I know that it's a challenge to work within the confines of the programs that we offer throughout the department, but we do put substantial dollars on the table, and we do attempt to assist as many Nova Scotians as we can. The almost $17.7 million for the programming going out this year is a numeric figure that we could use, but I want to talk about the couple of programs that we did that I think go directly to the member's question. Just recently, the Minister of Energy, through Conserve Nova Scotia, Energy and Conserve Nova Scotia partnered with Community Services to do exactly what the member was referencing. We took a program where we used low-income homes. They got the information from us through our folks in the field, and they were able to go in and provide those energy-efficient upgrades, just as the member has suggested. So that's something that I'm going to encourage Conserve to do on a regular basis, because it isn't all about providing an energy rebate, as the Minister for Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations will hopefully be doing very soon. It isn't just that, but we have to do the preventative piece as well. And so those energy-efficient upgrades are extremely important. So I'll be looking to the Minister of Energy to continue that program, perhaps even broaden it if we could, as we were able to do with the Department of Health. The Department of Health was able to partner with us through the infusion of $4 million last year, another $3.5 million this year for those home repair programs for the seniors. So we will continue to look at creative ways to do the energy efficiency upgrades and to provide the option for those seniors who choose to stay in their home and, as we like to refer to it, age in place as they see fit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Preston.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and anything we can do to help a senior stay in their homes, I think it's a cost-saving measure to start with for the province. If you look at about $150 a day, and I'm just guessing what a nursing home costs today, at $150 a day, you're about $450,000 a year to keep one person in one bed. for about $20,000 a year, you could probably keep that person at home. In some cases you can't because the individuals need that level of care. But you keep that person at home in an energy efficient, safe home that they could live out their lives with and be very, very happy, actually happier living at home. And everybody, of course, is happier living at home. So if you do the math on it, it wouldn't take very many upgrades in homes to really, number one, take a lot of stress off of the real critical shortage we have in nursing bed homes, with nursing beds that we have today, take stress off the hospitals that are actually putting people up temporarily. Now, some of those people would have to be in that situation, but some don't need to be in that situation. And take that stress off, it would relieve the healthcare system so we can get more people through the healthcare system faster, and ultimately, overall, reduce costs. So it just seems to be a no-brainer to do the whole thing, right? So if you just run the numbers, I don't know if anyone has really run the numbers and seen how many people you could do. You could do a program in their home to keep them in a house even for 1 year, just 1 year. That will, getting close to $500,000 a year to go in a nursing home. And if you make a small investment in someone's home, maybe it's I know we do accessibility, and those are very good ones as well. But whatever's needed in that home to keep that senior there healthy and safe and economically so they can stay there. It wouldn't take many of those diversions, really, to start clearing up the backlog. And we talk about building more and more nursing homes, which are needed, but if we also got to go at it in different ways. So has the government done anything towards looking at this and really run the numbers on this to see what's going on? Because that's really what should be done.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I made the comment earlier today that sometimes those most common sense solutions to things are the ones that tend to go past us. But my honourable colleague brings a very common sense approach. And indeed, the government has looked at those very similar issues and those very same issues. The in-home support program that we have in the Department of Health. I know the creative ways that we've looked in the Department of Community Services for delivering some of the persons with disabilities programs that we have, recognizing that when you provide assistance to individuals meeting their needs, you relieve pressures on other places in the system. And that only naturally makes sense. The more we can do that, providing the quality care for Nova Scotians, and at the same time relieving some of those pressures in the system, the better off I think we all can be. So as part of the continuing care strategy through the Department of Health, the coordinated effort that we have with health and the other social departments, I concur that the more agreement we can have to better put the dollars in place for those programs, like we mentioned, the repair programs, the accessibility programs, and we did increase those grants from $3,000 to $5,000, and we increased the household income limits for those because we recognized that if we could allow those folks to stay, those Nova Scotians to stay in their homes longer by providing those grants to make those upgrades, to make their homes accessible, that saved on the other end. That prevented that push in the system for those nursing home beds and for those services. So we were able to increase those grants, and we were able to increase those income levels, as well as another key component to that was bringing the doctors, bringing the medical professionals in on it and saying that before someone actually becomes reliant on a wheelchair, for example, or reliant on a piece of equipment that would require their home to have those repairs, in advance of that, if the doctors knew that was imminent and they knew that was going to happen, then we would flow the dollars to those Nova Scotians so they could have those repairs made in anticipation of that happening. So again, it's that type of response and that type of adaptation to the programs that I think is incumbent upon all of us, and we will certainly continue to do that.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Well, I appreciate the Minister's approach to this, and I do truly appreciate what the department does to help seniors and other low-income Nova Scotians in this province, and we can never do enough in that regard. And always it's a struggle between budgets and realistic budgets and a need. And the trouble is, as our population gets older, it's going to be more and more need, and probably not as much money to satisfy the need. But you didn't answer my question. My question was specifically, has government done a cost analysis on the basis of looking at what it costs to keep someone in a home, in their own home, or what it costs to do in a nursing home, and how many of those could be avoided by a small improvement in the home or whatever, or accessibility, or it may be 2 or 3 different things. And as far as the in-home support program goes, quite frankly, it doesn't work well. It does not work well. The government says there's not enough workers, and when you check with the companies that supply it, they say we don't have enough money to hire the workers. And when you get somebody that really needs a lot of care and they get 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, it's no help, because the people just can't survive with that. And in some of those circumstances, they need a lot more help. Not 24 hours a day help, but more help than that. And I realize it's a scheduling problem, it's a resource problem, and a lot of problems. But has there been a costing analysis done by the province to see if there's a way that the dollars can be better utilized, and indeed stop the construction of some of the nursing homes, that hopefully will reduce the number, clear up the backlog in the hospitals some, by keeping people in their own home and adding better support there? It doesn't appear that that's happened.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And specifically to the question, while I wouldn't speak for another minister, that wouldn't be fair. I can say that the $3.5 million that's transferring this year to us, and the $4 million that was transferred last year to us, would lead me to believe that the Department of Health has done just that, that they've looked at ways where they can put dollars in place that would do exactly what we've been discussing here and keep some of that backlog away from the wait lists for the nursing homes. So while I can't say specifically yes or no that the Department of Health would have done that, it would be my expectation, and it would make sense to me that that would have happened, and that is how they would have determined that they could have transferred dollars to us. I know that directly to the question of collaboration and discussion and communication, as I mentioned earlier, we do have that discussion and communication with the Department of Health in other areas to ensure that the whole idea of that collaborative approach is taken. So we do it in other areas. We will encourage it to be done in the home adaptation and home repair program area as well. But it would be certainly my expectation that the departments do just that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
So it appears that there's some movement in that direction, but there's been no discussion between the different ministers regarding this problem. Is that what I'm understanding?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Well, certainly the discussion would be ongoing, Mr. Chair, but indeed, we do know that the Department of Health does transfer dollars to us for that purpose. Therefore, the discussions are taking place. Can we have more? Absolutely. Can we look at more creative ways? Sure. But they are taking place, and we will encourage them to continue to take place, to look at more creative ways to make sure that the whole aging in place strategy continues to work across all fields. Not just the Department of Health, but I would again include Conserve in that discussion. Conserve did have discussions through the Minister of Energy with the Department of Community Services, and we were able to partner. So we've proven that partnering works, and certainly we will continue to partner in the future.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think it's a small step in the right direction. But if last year, if the Department of Health transferred into the Department of Community Services $4 million, in effect, that's only 8 seniors that they've kept out of a nursing home, if it worked properly in their budget, when you look at their budget. If you take that $4 million and put it in your budget, and you could probably keep 50 or 60 or 100 seniors out of a nursing home or extended care bed, if you can appropriately address the issues of that senior. Now, that's not every senior wouldn't fit into that category. But when you take that and you spend that money, they should probably be putting $40 million into the program, and it would eliminate, 80 people. It's only 80 people that they're keeping out of a nursing home. But from their standpoint of the cost they would spend, But you take that $40 million, imagine the work you could do and improve the lot of seniors that would be there. And what 80 people they pay for in that department would probably keep 500 out of nursing homes in the right circumstances. So is there a committee within government of senior bureaucrats or with ministers or anything to look at this issue? Or does it just happen on a basis by basis with different departments looking at different opportunities?
The Minister for Community Services.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again to my honourable colleague, thank you for the question. And I would be delighted if the Minister of Health would like to transfer $40 million to my department any day. And I will co-sign the letter that my honourable colleague could write to him with that request. And I'm sure we could provide all sorts of creative solutions. But I say that in jest, Mr. Chair, not to make light of this very serious issue, but to certainly, reaffirm that I agree that the more that we can do on the front end, the better. And again, those programs that we've been able to do with Conserve, the work that we do with the Department of Health, we will continue to do that. And to my honourable colleague's question, yes, there is a committee. There is a group, the Continuum of Care coordinating group of deputy ministers. Indeed, the Deputy Minister of Community Services, Judith Ferguson, and the Deputy Minister of Health, Cheryl Dorion, co-chair that. My left hand here in the legislature today, George Savory, is part of that committee, and Susan Logue through the Department of Health is frontline on that as well. So I mean, there are discussions going on, and there are senior bureaucrats at those levels of discussion to ensure that the very issues that are being raised are considered every day when we look at the pressures in the system of health, community services, seniors, housing, etc.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
I'm very pleased to hear that, and giving credit where credit is due, I think the housing grants and the programs you have are very, very effective. And I can say in my own area that many people have been managed to stay in their homes a lot longer because of them. So I want to commend the staff that operates those and tries to do everything they possibly can to make the funds they have fit the needed solution. And sometimes that's almost impossible. And we understand that, but we sometimes have some very irate people that call us up that think they should get something and they don't fit the criteria. And we just simply tell them that, if they don't fit the criteria, we can't help. But staff is always very courteous to everyone that calls and deals with them. And I can't say enough good about that part of your department, and I would ask you to pass that on to your staff if you would, if you don't mind. The only issue I have is they need more money. And we really have to look at some of these creative ways to ensure that people can stay in their own homes as long as they physically or mentally can. We should really be working on that. And again, it's a start. You're going backwards. So from the Department of Health, $4 million down to $3.5 million. That's unfortunate, but they also have other stresses on their system. But if we can just take a few people out of the system and keep them at home, well, number one, when you stay at home, you're healthier and happier. And it's been proven if someone has had a major operation, they get home sooner, they get better sooner, so less strain on the system. So I think if we can keep seniors at home where they're happy with their friends and their neighbors and their family around a lot easier, they will stay healthier longer. And again, to take a stress off the system, which is, very, very stressed, and it's going to get worse as our population gets older and older and older. And a percentage of our population is into that category. And it's going to be quite dramatic in the next 10, 20 years. So if we don't take those steps now and have some foresight, like you've been talking about accessibility prior to being needed, we're going to be in a real mess. I mean, we're difficult now. It's very difficult now, but it's going to be a real mess if we don't address it today for tomorrow. And some of those things could be different programs. I quite honestly don't believe the federal or provincial government do enough towards energy efficiency in homes. I think it's a program that was started in the 70s when there was this imaginary oil crisis that the oil companies created. I think it was to put the price of gas up, and heating fuel and everything else. We're seeing it again now with just straight increases in price. But if we don't take those things into consideration and help people in modest incomes that can do more, because there's not enough yet. There isn't near enough yet. We're going to continue with high heating costs, and seniors are going to have to leave their home. So if they got a choice of having supper tonight or heating their home, they're going to heat their home. So then they get sick. And then if they're sick, they're in a hospital, and our problem gets worse. And they shouldn't be sick because they can't eat. And then if they don't heat their home, and I've got seniors in my area didn't heat their home this winter, pipes all froze, now they get no bathroom. So they live in a non-sanitary condition. And just because they can't afford to do everything. And these people have worked all their lives to get their homes. And these aren't huge, big, expensive homes. They're very nice homes, but they've worked all their lives to get these homes. Probably one of the spouses has passed away, and the pension income from that spouse is gone now. So you're talking about some people $6,000, $7,000 a year to live on. You can't buy your fuel for the year and feed yourself for that amount. You can't and properly do it. Never mind keeping the repairs up in your home to a level that at least your home is safe and comfortable, and all the other repairs you need to do, and your plumbing that always goes after so many years, and all the other things that break down in the home no matter how well it's built. So that's really the point I'm getting at. And I know the minister understands that and works diligently to try to ensure that we can help these people. But is there any movement towards even more help for that particular group of individuals? Now, if you got someone that's working with a modest income, a little bit of help will go a long ways. But if you get someone that's extremely low income, no hope of they can't get a part-time job or do anything like that, so they have no other source of income. And I think there should be higher levels. I know there's a bit higher for seniors than modest income, but to make sure that those people can stay in their home. And I can think of 30 or 40 people in my own area, and it's not my area, it's all over the province. It doesn't matter if you live in Halifax or if you live in Yarmouth or in Sydney or wherever you live or some small community somewhere, the problem is the same. And we've got to do some things to help people like that. And these are hard-working people that worked all their lives, and hopefully they would have and be able to enjoy retirement. And now they're struggling to survive, not just, worrying about going out social evening. They can't even think about that unless it's free, and someone will pick them up and take them home again. So that's what I'm talking about, and we shouldn't have Nova Scotia living in that kind of atmosphere. We've really got to do some things, and these people aren't asking for gifts. They're not asking, their handouts saying, here, give me this, give me this, give me this. They're just asking for an opportunity to be able to stay in their home, be warm in the winter, be able to buy groceries for themselves, and to keep their homes in good conditions. Those are the people I think that we're not doing enough to help. I know the programs, and I stress again, your department does everything they possibly can in those situations. But the limitations are so severe on what they can do that sometimes if you get a situation where you need another $2,000 to really fix the problem, the department tries everything they can, and I guarantee you the senior does, even to the point of getting someone to do the work free and just buy the materials to get the problem fixed. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again, and people will come and do that to really help that. And I think that's an issue we really have to look at, and that's something the federal government should really be helping our province with as well. And if we can keep these people healthy and happy in their own home, it saves us so much money. It's just a no-brainer, as they say, but it really, really pays off to do this. And if you got a senior there that's added so much to the community and done so many things over the years and helped build our economy, over the last 80 years in some cases, I think we're letting them down. And we've really got to move forward and see if we can help those people stay in those homes longer. Even if we give them, like the tax credit program they have with the municipality, where you can defer your taxes until up to 3/4 of the assessment on your home. We got a lot of seniors take advantage of that, and that works well. And the only problem is now they're attaching interest to it, which they shouldn't do. But that money has to be repaid when the house is sold, or if someone else inherits a home, they've got to pay that, and that's only rightfully so. So why couldn't we put some kind of a system in place as a last resort, and I stress as a last resort, that could happen, do repairs on the home to fix it properly, and then that adds value to the home, of course, and whoever inherits that home, or if they sell the home for the estate or whatever, then the money could be paid back, or a portion of it, or some kind of program like that we can really improve what you have. Because what you have works well, but it's too short, it's too little in some cases. Some cases it's perfect. If someone needs a roof repaired and they get most of it paid for under a grant, it's perfect. Absolutely perfect. The problem's solved, and it's solved probably for the rest of the life of that individual who lives there, and that's perfect. But sometimes it doesn't do it. Is there any thought towards that, and any approaches, innovative approaches your department has looked at doing, particularly that?
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague. It raises 3 or 4 really good points in that little round of questioning, and so I'll try and address 2 or 3 of the pieces that my honourable colleague brought up in that. And I want to again thank my honourable colleague for his commending of the staff, because they really are very good, and they work miracles with some of their creative ways to try and address the needs. And I know that my honourable colleague and I have met different times with different staff, with different constituents that my honourable colleague brings in, and he does so because that's his job, but he does it because he cares, and it's that caring nature that is so reflected with those seniors and with those Nova Scotians who come to him with those issues. And so I thank him for that mention of the staff. I do want to be very clear, though, even though the Department of Health did decrease the amount of transfer, we did not decrease our budget line. Actually, ours increased. So we recognize the importance to continue with those programs that we've put in place. The menu, the over 13 housing programs that we have in place, the menu that we have, we did increase our budget because we certainly recognize that it's important to provide those grants and loans to those Nova Scotian families who come to us for them. And you know, my honourable colleague did raise another issue, another point that has been said here once today already, but needs to be said again. Our population is aging, and the challenges are very real, and they're right in front of us right now. And to ignore those challenges it would be irresponsible. And so that the proactive, the preventative pieces that we're talking about, the work that we did with Conserve, making sure that we got in with those energy efficient programs, that's exactly what my honourable colleague was asking. Is there a thought to continue to do these creative things? Absolutely. Absolutely. We're constantly striving for ways to be creative with the challenges, to ensure that energy efficiency is taken into consideration, to ensure that putting the dollars in place for the seniors so that they don't have to go to the nursing care until they're ready to, if they choose that option. Those are absolutely at the forefront of our minds in all of our deliberations. The other piece that I want to make reference to as well, my honourable colleague raised, without saying it, that I want to reflect on, is that we have one of the oldest stock of housing in the country here in Nova Scotia. And that doesn't come without its challenges. So it's that's a piece that needs to be identified and brought to the floor here today. That while we recognize that there are challenges for other reasons, that one's very real, and that old housing stock can't simply be turned over or rolled over quickly and dealt with quickly. It poses lots of challenges, and so we need to recognize that as a reality as well. The energy efficiency, I think, is one of the things that needs to be at the forefront of our minds when we go through our housing, the menu of our housing programs. And that's why I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the Minister responsible for Conserve, because I think the more that we can do there, the better off people will be in the long run. And the other piece, of course, is the Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations. When the Your Energy rebate was redesigned this year, part of that redesign included exactly what my honourable colleague was referencing, that rebate that would go to those low-income households, which is so important. because my goodness, the stories and the example that you used, pipes freezing and those types of things, those stories are very real. And we all know they're very real in our communities, and that's not something that we want to continue to hear. So we need to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to assist those folks before that becomes the reality. The last piece that I wanted to mention as well, you talked about the tax rebate issue, and we do have the $400 tax rebate for the seniors in place now through our department, and of course, as part of a budget issue, that will raise to the $800 commitment in this year's budget. So that's a positive step, specifically to your question about the creative ways to provide those dollars back into the hands of the seniors. And so, short and sweet, Mr. Chair. Not that that was a short and sweet answer, but short and sweet to my honourable colleague. Absolutely, I think it's incumbent upon every one of us as members to look for creative ways to continue to help seniors and other Nova Scotians with housing challenges. I think it's incumbent upon us, and I think it's very real and true that we all work together through that coordinating continuum of care committee, through our deputy ministers, and as members of this whole legislature. Thank you.
The honourable member for Preston, with about 20 seconds left in this session.
I have some more questions for the minister later, but I thank her for her answers and the commitment that we will move forward and try to help seniors any way we possibly can. And again, commend the department for the work they're doing through their staff to help our seniors and modest income residents in the province. Thank you.
Order, please. Time has expired for the Liberal caucus. To the honourable minister, would you need a break, or you're good to go? The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The break was offered, but that's fine. We'll keep going. Let us know when you need one. Getting back to where I really wanted to end off on last time was the Career Seek program. And as you know, Madam Minister, in the fall, the department's pilot project came under quite a bit of scrutiny. A young student, Melissa Myers, who happens to be physically challenged, had brought some attention to the pilot program. A question was raised in the House, and I know that you went back to the department, went back to the cabinet table and expressed your concerns for some of the things that weren't really working. The program we know wasn't successful. 50 applicants originally we were looking at over the next 4 years. There was 2 that was actually accepted in that first run. So we've addressed some of the issues. I know that you've given me clarification as to what things and were put in place now, and I agree that they were difficult decisions for Cabinet to make, but I do think that they will have some success over the next year. That being said, I believe at that time you had made mention that there had been other applicants, perhaps 53 or 59, that were turned down. I believe at the time you had said that the department would be reviewing those cases again and bring them up against the new standards. So I'm wondering if you can tell me if that was done.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I welcome my honourable colleague from Dartmouth North back to the discussion. The Career Seek pilot program was one of those programs that we put in place that I was extremely pleased with. And we've talked about this before in this legislature. As an educator, as someone who believes in the lifelong benefits of education, it was very important to me that I not simply ignore the suggestions coming from across the way and ignore that very important component to breaking the cycle. And so when we put the program in place, it was with the best of intentions. And staff worked hard to come up with a program that respected the parameters that they were given and that would have provided that opportunity for income assistant clients who qualified to be able to attain a post-secondary education. Mr. Chair, I don't stand here pretending that anything different than it didn't work. And I've acknowledged that, and I've said that I found that regrettable. And so we then embarked upon the process of let's fix it. And if we can't fix it, then there is a gain, same as the other program we were discussing earlier. If we can't fix the program and have it work, then it's no good. It's of no value. So we did go back to the drawing board. We did make some changes, and I was pleased with those changes. And no, they weren't easy to convince everyone of, but you know what? At the end of the day, it was the right thing to do. I said already once today that we work with our fiscal hats and we work with our hearts, and we know that we balance those two out. So I just want to review a little bit, because I know my honourable colleague understands, but I do want to review for other members in the House who might not be as familiar with the program as he is, some of the changes that we made. So the changes were effective January 2008 to make better access to the program. So there was a decrease in the length of time that people needed to be in receipt of assistance before applying for Career Seek. The provision of continued income assistance for eligible costs related to shelter and personal allowances. We broadened the definition of the types of undergraduate programs that could be supported, which was extremely important to my honourable colleague. There was a more comprehensive awareness and promotional campaign in partnership with community agencies. That was one of the biggest stumbling blocks when I met with individuals and met with university representatives and met with the students and different representatives. That they said we just simply didn't understand and we didn't know, and we didn't know how to access. So we certainly made sure that issue was addressed. The recognition of the unique needs of re-entry adult learners was something that was really important. And of course, an attempt to reduce the cost for eligible recipients by increasing the awareness of other departmental programs, such as the Lone Parent Housing Program, to ensure that people knew that there were other programs they could access. They wouldn't lose their eligibility for one program simply because they attempted to access this program. And of course, the removal of the cap to the program. The cap was an insignificant figure that we put on there that worked more as a wall than it did as an incentive. So with those changes put in place, Mr. Chair, we did have extensive consultation with staff to ensure that staff fully understood the brochure that was prepared and the brochure that was delivered to staff, the training that took place with staff to ensure that they knew that of all the changes, to ensure that we could go back out. And I cannot confirm to the member the number of individuals who didn't get access to the program. I don't have that number at my fingertips. I will get that number for him, and I will confirm for him the number of individuals that were contacted specifically to be made aware of the changes. It was my direction that they be made aware of those changes, so it would be my expectation that they were, and so I will get that information to my honourable colleague with that confirmation as soon as I can, and we look forward to an increase in the number of applicants for this year, because we know that by those changes that were put in place, the school year had already gotten into swing, so we knew that we wouldn't see the immediate enrollment increase at that point. But I look forward, as I know my honourable colleague does, I look forward to seeing the increase enrollment in this program for September 2008.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to welcome the honourable leader of the Liberal Party to the conversation. I know it's community services is an issue.
Order, please. We're not supposed to recognize members present or not present. Thank you very much.
I will rescind on that. Thank you for that clarification on the program, and I will concur that the changes were definitely positive. One of the real issues early on, and again I talked about that holistic approach when an individual seeks out assistance from the department, is let's be upfront with people. Let's allow them to have that knowledge of opportunities that are existing for them, that they can take advantage of. And I think one of the things that happened early on was the fact that caseworkers might not have pursued individuals as actively as they should have. And I know the minister and I have had conversations about the number that would necessarily or maybe qualify for the post-secondary education. But even if it is a small, minute number, I think we have to actively pursue that. And I appreciate getting back any information. I know it's going to be early in the program. However, I'm pleased to hear that you say that you're going to keep an eye on this one, because I would love to see some uptake on the program in the, and find out more in the fall session coming up. I'm going to move on to childcare, and as you know, we'll start out real. Yeah, it's a favorite. It's a huge issue right now. As you know, we raised some questions in the House yesterday. I'm gonna make a point right now to start out, and then I'll go to some of my notes. I had the opportunity yesterday to speak with some of the child care educators that were here, and one of the issues around child care has been these stabilization grants and how the money actually gets passed on to the early childhood educator. And I was amazed to see and speak with one of the people that had visited the gallery yesterday, who had actually brought her pay stubs from the last 4 years. And the only increase that she's seen in the last 4 years, and this is where it really hits home, this is why we criticize these stabilization grants, and because the fear of it not being passed on by the employer. In 4 years, she had not received an increase. She was university educated, and the only increase she's seen in 4 years on her paycheck was the most recent increase in the minimum wage. So I guess what I'm saying is that, when we tote out these announcements of the stabilization grant in hopes that they're actually working and bringing the wages up, seeing those pay stubs yesterday just told me and reconfirmed that it's not working. Something's not working, and I'm wondering if there's some way or that the department can, maybe, check into or be more actively involved in ensuring that the employees actually have that money passed on.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
You're kidding. Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague for bringing the issue up. And yes, I do enjoy the discussion on childcare. Again, to bring out the hats of the days gone by. As a mother of 4 and as an educator, I know the value of quality choice childcare. As every individual in this House would recognize, it is a key component to healthy, active, well-rounded, viable families that those choices be available. Specifically, the operational grants, which I referenced yesterday in the House, with a budget line of $5.2 million last year and $5.5 million this year, when we put in place the early learning and child care plan, we made specific changes to the way the grants were delivered, and we did that because we needed to streamline the delivery of those grants. It was a little bit awkward, to say the least. It was cumbersome. So when we did that, Mr. Chair, we needed also to make sure that no one received less, no one suffered because of those changes. And so we did grandparent a certain percentage, a certain number of child care centres in the province, 40 of them to be exact, because we wanted to make sure that no one was disadvantaged. And so that was, again, a positive move on our part to ensure that they were not disadvantaged. The specific question of the operating grants and salaries is one that I take very seriously, because part of the agreement that was struck with the child care centres, commercial and not-for-profit, when they receive the operating grants, part of that agreement is that they open their books to us, and that constant communication, which is so key for the accountability, the transparency, that constant communication piece be available. And as part of the operational grants, there was a requirement that 75% go to salaries and benefits. I mentioned that in my opening statements. It could be pension benefits, it could be vacation time for staff, salaries, other benefits that the centres chose to put into place. So we have centres who have been grandparented, so there was no loss. We have a requirement that 75% be used for salaries and benefits. We have the open monitoring and open communication between the centres and the department. And I have to trust that the centres are using those dollars in the required manner that they are provided. And I certainly encourage the educators, the child care educators, to have open lines of communication with their executive directors, with the boards of the centers, and with their co-workers, because there have been miscommunication pieces out there. I know my own staff have met with some of the child care workers that were here yesterday that my honourable colleague referenced, and there has been miscommunication amongst the levels, amongst the workers, amongst the executive director, and perhaps amongst the board. So I think it's important for those communication pieces to be in place. And so the monitoring of those books is very important. And again, I would just re-emphasize that it is my expectation that those dollars would be put in place for exactly what they were intended to do, and that is to compensate those hardworking child care educators. Thank you.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, again, like I said, it became quite evident yesterday when I seen the pay stubs that it's not working. So I appreciate the minister stating that, you know, the open lines of communication, things are taking place, but I think we have to look at it a lot harder. The evidence is there. It was there yesterday, and I was quite disappointed when I seen that. I'm going to move into some budget items. The budget item, income assistance, 4.2. It's been 2.3 million each of the last year, well, each year since 2006, 2007. 2.3 million, that is. Given the breakdown obtained through the Freedom of Information Act regarding the federal child care dollars, and we raised a question on that yesterday in the House, I'm wondering, why is the department using the federal money to pay for what we would consider to be provincial obligations instead of putting those federal dollars into the expansion of more spaces for families?
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of pieces, I guess, to that question. First of all, we recognize that the federal dollars that flow through to the province to be used for childcare we recognize that those need to be spent wisely. And we have invested, I believe, wisely in choice childcare. And we can get into the issue of drawing down enough or not drawing down enough, or deferring or not deferring, and I'm happy to have those discussions. I don't think that was exactly where my colleague was going on this specific question, so I'll have those discussions if someone raises them later. The specific question about the drawdown here, though, if my honourable colleague is talking about 4.2 in the table details, the income assistance childcare line isn't income assistance rates. That's for special needs childcare, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, we'll move on to some more federal funding. What we've been seeing in the general line items is funding that's been announced, but it's been deferred, and it keeps continuously getting deferred. And again, the honourable leader from Cole Harbour has commented on that in the line of question period yesterday. Early child care programs phase 2 is an example. Okay, 7.8 million was announced in 2006-2007. 0 was spent. $14,800 was announced last year. 7 million was spent. So of the $15.8 million announced this year, how much of it will actually make its way into programming and expansion?
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Accelerating. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yes, the confirmation that I was just receiving was that we are accelerating, Mr. Chair, the program because we did have to defer dollars along the way to ensure that they went in the right place in the first place. So we are accelerating that, and I would be delighted to stand here and say every dollar that we've committed will be out the door, as I wish had been the case each and every time, you know, recognizing that there are some times when you can't get the dollars out the door. And I know my honourable colleague knows this. The expansion and the extra seats, we can't physically create a seat. We can provide the dollars so the child care centres can expand and they can grow, or we can have new centres, and so we can provide those dollars. We all know the challenges that are out there in the construction and in the construction industry these days. And the challenges of us moving, we commit the dollars, the challenges of us getting those dollars out the door, sometimes it's beyond our control. We see that in housing as well. And so we commit the dollars, we're there, and it's actually getting it out the door. But that is sometimes beyond our control. So we have committed, we have accelerated it, and I hope not to have to stand here next year and say that it was beyond our control to get the dollars out the door.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, you'd have to, I would more than likely think that you would agree that, yes, you know, we provide money for subsidized spaces. The issue is always, I have it now, but it's not available to me. Space is, we have a space issue and we have wage issue with the childcare sector. And I mean, there is a feeling, as you know, I'm sure you're well aware of it out there, that, you know, these are professionally trained individuals, and I know you appreciate that. They've taken on, and they just want to have that respect of earning a proper income for doing the job that they have to do. I want to talk about the early intervention programs. Now, a lot of these early intervention programs have been around for about 25 years. Since 2000, they've come under the jurisdiction of the Department of Community Services, and they currently serve over 600 families. But there's a waiting list of 174 currently trying to get into programming. Now, there's an issue with some agreements between these centres and the department, and there's a little bit of a bad feeling, actually. And I'm going to ask some questions regarding the early intervention programs. In light of the unstable and stagnant funding provided to existing intervention programs, how does the department view the importance of early intervention programs as a part of the overall plan in the child care 10-year plan?
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Increases to their salaries, not to the salaries that you showed that to me a second ago, and I don't know where it went. Could be. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking specifically for a piece of information to answer my honourable colleague's question regarding, I just wanted to go back to the value of the child care educators, and I was looking for the piece that it was included in the last round of announcements where we increased the salaries for those individuals with the university degrees, with the diploma, etc. Because I thought it was important to just remind all members that we do value, and it's not enough to just say that you value it, but to show the proof of that. So I'll find that exact number and get that from my honourable colleague in a moment. And because I think it's important that we again recommit that commitment. So specifically to the early intervention program funding, you know, we value the work of the early intervention programs. We recognize them as a core service in the delivery of programs for young children with special needs. The early childhood, the regional early childhood development and community outreach specialists and program staff continue to work with early intervention programs to address their needs within, of course, the fiscal responsibility. In mid-March, Mr. Chair, we increased funding to the early intervention programs by approximately $46,000. So this is in addition to the 2007-2008 budget amount of $2.3 million, Mr. Chair. So absolutely it plays a key role in the ELCC plan.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I stated in the opening line of questions, there's currently a waiting list of 174 families. So I guess there is a question, and you cited some stats and figures and threw out a dollar amount. I'm wondering if you can reassure me again, from the department's perspective, what is your department prepared to do to support the growth and address the wait lists that we currently see in the province for some of these early intervention programs.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
So again, Mr. Chair, thank you very much to my honourable colleague for the opportunity to again highlight the importance of the early intervention program funding. And as I stated, the 46,000 increase is tangible proof of just that, Mr. Chair. In mid-March, the early intervention programs received an increase in their funding. As I say, approximately 46,000 in accordance with their actual expenditures. The boards of the early intervention programs are expecting the actuals to be funded on that annual basis, and they've indicated they will certainly, work with us to address that concern. A meeting was held on February the 15th with the department staff and the Early Intervention Association, to talk about these issues. And while we always can't come to agreement, I think my honourable colleague would agree, even though we always can't come to agreement, whether it's in this House or it's with associations, as long as we continue to recognize that there is a need to have dialogue. And so we can put dollars on the table, and sometimes it will be perceived as enough, sometimes it will be perceived as not enough, but as long as we continue to dialogue, I think that is really important here. So, we also, so we'll continue to work with the early intervention groups to ensure that their concerns are heard, and we'll